All right. Hello and welcome to the Big Money Stylist podcast. My name is Courtney. I'm an educator here for Natural Beaded Rose Extensions. And we have Shanna here with us.
Hi, guys.
Tell us your name and where you're from.
So my name is Shanna Wiedekamper. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I have a small boutique salon there. And I've been with NBR, I guess, since 2017. But the dates were all spotty for me. I was like, was it 2016 or 17? It's been a while, so I've been around.
You've been around. Okay, so let's go into these dates together. So tell us first, like, where you were at and how you started back in, like, what was it, 2016, 2017 with NBR.
Originally, I went onto YouTube to find, honestly, it was like a lived-in color method that I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Danielle's videos came up, and I just remember the hair looking so gorgeous. So it was originally just the color. And then I clicked on the link, of course, and she was like, learn my extension method. And that was where it all started. And I signed up for the academy, and it was like a really quick sale for me because I hadn't seen hair like that, especially extensions. I felt like everything looked so unnatural at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't pretty. It wasn't
So
lived in.
2016, 2017. It was the YouTube days is kind of how we mark time.
Yeah.
So back in the YouTube days. And so when you started and you clicked the link, did you come to one of the private intensives at the Surf and Sand?
So the first thing I went to was actually BMS Con. And I can't believe I don't know the numbers. Everyone else is so good. They're like, yeah, it was BMS Con 1, BMS Con 2. I don't actually know which convention it was.
Okay, so it was a big public convention that you came in on.
Yes, that was the first experience I had. I think it was like $3,000 at the time, like for the initial.
You were like investing a lot in your business?
Yes.
Had you invested that much into your business prior other than beauty school?
Not in one ticket, one certification. No, I had invested a lot and I traveled a ton and I did all these things that I thought would bring my business forward. And yeah, no, never that amount.
Okay, so you like made this big investment. What did your business look like at that time, right? So we're going to go back, not your business now or the success and the growth and the trials and the tribulations that you've had in that time frame. But if you put yourself back into the artist and the stylist who was like searching YouTube for these things, what did your life and what did your business look like at that time?
So we're going to start with my business.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I had left a commissioned salon. It was a great salon, but it was going downhill. I went and opened up my own. Well, I say my own. I shared it with somebody else, but it was like a salon suite. I thought I was doing well. Like I had a pretty steady clientele. I think I was bringing in like, at that time to me, it felt, I was like, I'm doing great. It's like, which I'm not discrediting this. It was like around $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
I was working all the time and no family. Like I didn't have children. I wasn't married. I literally lived and died by like my work calendar.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely prioritized traveling and all of that. But at that time, I thought I was doing pretty well. I was doing tape-in extensions, just getting.
So you were checking all the boxes that you thought you needed to check in order to fulfill what success looked like in the industry at that time.
Right, exactly.
How many days a week were you working at that moment?
Probably 5 to 6. I was doing weddings on the side. I ended up doing, thinking if I did Fashion Week, that would get me, I would get out there. I would get paid for this. I paid to go to Fashion Week. I got paid nothing for it, and nobody really cared. They were like, cool, that's neat marketing. Like, we love seeing it, but it didn't get me anywhere except for a few, like, tips to use along the way.
Yeah, I think those things sometimes too, and I was just talking with Kiki about it earlier today. I love that you said you came in through bridal. I came in through bridal. That was how I started the industry. And I remember doing like photo shoots and collaborations and thinking like, oh, I'm working with this photographer. Oh, I'm working with this designer, or I'm working with, and I was doing hair and makeup on these things. And it wasn't about income. It was about like trying to get your name exposure and get your name out there.
Yeah.
And it didn't actually.
No, absolutely not. I worked with magazines. I was like, this is going to be so wonderful for my career, but no, it wasn't. It was just like more time commitments, not getting any more leads. It was not changing my business at all. I was still seeing like a ton of clients a day, and it was like men's haircut, woman's haircut. I was so overwhelmed. Like, I don't function like that. Like,
Right.
I can only handle so many personalities a day because, you know, people are dumping stuff on us, and it's wonderful the connections we have, and I totally cherish those moments, but that was not what I saw my future looking like. That is not how I saw, that's just not how I saw my life working out in the future. Like, there was no way to have a family, to get married, to have time to travel without canceling everybody, like rescheduling them and cramming everybody into this small time frame and just killing yourself.
Which is an industry standard. For some reason, I don't know why it is, but the saying of like booked and busy, we almost glorify it that like you're saying, like someone comes in and it's like a men's cut. One thing that I remember a lot would be you were doing a like root retouch and a cut for a like women's cut and color. And then while she was processing, like you did her kid's haircut or her husband's haircut. And you were like, I'm double booking. Like and you're right. You're burnt out.
Literally burnt out. No time for yourself.
Do you remember what it's like to go home after those days? Like when you finally like drove home?
Sleep.
Yeah.
I would literally go home. I was in my 20s and I'm like, I should not be this tired. I would go home. I would sleep until, 8 o'clock at night. And then I'd be like, I guess we can go out. But then I really didn't want to because I didn't want to see any more people. I was so tapped out from the day
energetically.
Yes, totally.
100%. So you're like, this business that I'm doing is I'm working 5 to 6 days a week. I'm energetically drained, and this isn't what I want to do next.
No. And I feel like people still looked at my business as being successful. Like, you know how your clients, like your clients are your biggest fans, and you're almost like their little celebrity. I hate to say that, but it's true. They're like, wow, you're so successful. You're so busy. Like everyone's excited about being busy, but in reality, it's like, it's not.
I'm burnt out.
I
look busy, but I'm actually burnt out behind the chair.
Yes.
And then I'm burnt out behind the chair. And when I want to go do something else, like for my own self, I'm too tired. So I have nothing else to give.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you were in this place, you were feeling this burnt out, and you stumbled across the extension method. Were you like, oh, the tool of doing extensions is going to help me get out of this burnout? Or was there something about the message of building your business a certain way that appealed to you?
Quite honestly, I didn't even look at the business marketing aspect of it. I think I literally looked at it as like another tool I can add to my belt. I'm like, where will I fit this? But like, I wasn't thinking those things. I was just diving in because the hair was beautiful. I went in for the shiny object. And a client of mine actually had mentioned like, oh, I went to somebody else because she did these extensions. I'm curious if you're doing extensions now because I love your color. I want to come back to you. And that was it. I was like, I have to do this. Like, her name's Susie. I love her. She's a dear, dear client that moved to Texas, and now she's seen by another NBR artist. But she was really kind of what pushed me into doing that because I was like, I want to do her hair. I want to do her color again. I enjoy her as a client. She respects me. We had boundaries. Like, it was wonderful. So,
like your ideal client. You're like, I need more Susies in my chair.
Absolutely. Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. It is awesome once you're able to identify like who is your dream client. And if you're listening, that's something I want you to think about. Like, Shanna's sitting here saying like, Susie was my ideal client. Like, she respected my boundaries. She loved my color work. I enjoyed her when she sat in my chair. Like, we lifted each other up. So when you're thinking about your business and you have those clients where you're like, this is my dream client. If I could have 100 Susies, my life would be ideal. And I think it's good to tap into that and to know who that is, because that's what allows you. It's like the first glimpse of like, oh, I don't have to be burnt out. Oh, I could have clients that aren't texting me late at night or wanting to come in at 6:30 because that's when she gets off work to start her process.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so that's where you were at. You found this method. The shiny hair brought you in, and then you booked your ticket for convention. You said yes. You went all in on yourself and your education and invested more than you had previously.
Yes. It was the biggest ticket for sure.
What was your experience like leading up to convention and all that excitement, and then also like once you were there?
I was so thrilled to be traveling. Like any opportunity for me to travel for education, especially, I was like, I have to do this. Like this is it. So, yeah, there was a lot of anticipation. I really didn't know what to expect, but like walking in to that room and like feeling that energy and seeing literally the most beautiful hair, I will never forget that feeling, because before I was used to seeing like really crappy extensions. Like I had the mullet that felt good. It felt good because I had hair, but it didn't look good. And then when I walked into the room and I was like, do you have extensions? Do you have NBR? Like you have NBR too? And it's like this long, luxurious hair. And then we sit down and we watch this little beautiful movie. Like I was brought to tears. It was like I was pulled in so quickly. Like, wow, I came for the pretty hair, but like now they're tapping into how it feels to be a slave behind the chair. This is me. It was speaking to me. Like it was, yeah, it was totally captivating and really life-changing. I had always been into like self like growth and all that kind of stuff, and I didn't even realize what I was coming into whenever I stepped into that room.
Yeah, I think there is something so magical about that. And it's one of those things that like, that's why I'm like, I want you to share it, because if you haven't experienced it, you almost can't even like conceptualize of what it could be. But there is this moment that she's talking about where you step into this room, and we were talking about it in a training this week inside of the academy, is like there is this high frequency level of entrepreneurs all in the same room who have been at this place where they're like, just like your story of I was burnt out, I was overbooked, people weren't like respecting my boundaries. And then you get here and you're like, you're running your business how? Like you work how many days? You love all your client, your hair is beautiful, their hair is beautiful. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, like, could I do that?
Right. The possibilities opened. Your story, your story changed, or your story starts to change at that moment, or you realize that you have control over your business.
I think too, when you said like your story changes, like that's so huge, because a lot of time we don't even know we have these stories.
Right.
And we just adopt them coming into this industry. So what stories did you have at that time when you're like, my story changed? What were the ones you were currently living in?
I could never, ever imagine getting rid of the clients that I had been doing for a decade or even less time than that. But they were like, the little lady, like I literally had one roller set that, again, I will never forget her name. She was so sweet. I loved her dearly. I'm like, I can't get rid of her. Who is she going to go to? Who's going to take care of her? And I can't let go of these men's haircuts. These guys are like my brothers. I grew up with a lot of brothers. I see them every 2 weeks. They rely on me for their haircuts. I am the best at doing their hair. I can't let them go. I can't let them down. And I remember at that time I was charging like $32 for a men's haircut. And I was scared about charging $34 for a men's haircut. So I kept letting other people dictate how I ran my business, which I'm still working on to this day. I feel like it's something that you're constantly working on. Like when you have a growth mindset, you still have to work on it forever, like every so often. So yeah, at that time, I couldn't let people go. I didn't feel like I could shift my business. I felt like I was forever going to be trapped in this literal game of making money and then spending it, and it was gone. Like I didn't feel like I had anything left over, even though I felt like I was making a good amount of money. But when you have your own space, you're paying for all the overhead.
So you're not really taking home $50,000.
I'm not taking it home. In my mind, I was like, that's a lot of money. I'm doing really, really well. But no. Meanwhile, you're like paycheck to paycheck, like faking it, literally faking it. I felt like I had it all figured out at that point. I was faking all of it. I hate even saying that, but I wanted to be successful so badly that I put on this like external thing to like make it look like I was very successful.
When inside you were like,
struggling.
I'm struggling and I'm burnt out.
Totally.
One thing that you said that I think is so huge, and I want to make sure that we're really focusing on that, because it was just a quick sentence, but it was so beautifully said, of you're in these stories, but there's always going to be other stories if you're in a growth mindset. Mm-hmm. So you're like, I'm still working on some of these stories now. Mm-hmm. And that was in 2016 or 2017. So that's been quick math in my head, like 7-8 years that you have been in a story, worked on it, and then found a new story on the other side, but you're choosing to grow out of that each and every time. Are you able to recognize your stories quicker?
1,000. I mean, if we're doing percentages right now, 1,000%. Like, I can't even believe how easy it is to recognize. Like, we were doing our like meditation back there. You envision yourself on the island. And I remember doing this years ago, and I got very teary-eyed because it's like the same kind of meditation, which is wonderful. Like, repetition helps a lot. And I finally realized that part too. But we were doing the meditation, seeing ourselves like where we were. And I remember I am literally, if I bring out my notebook and look it up, it would be amazing if it was true. But I remember picturing me now, like literally manifesting this life that I have now. I was not married before. I wanted to be married. I wanted children. I wanted to have a busy and successful life. And I have reached those points, but I'm still working on this confidence in being sure in myself. I feel like I struggle with like being confused because I just am not super clear, and I'm still working on clarity portion and the secure and the like secure in my decision, I guess. So being firm and all that stuff. But it's amazing how you can recognize and reposition yourself and move forward into like a new version of yourself.
What do you think the community and that ability to have peers also on that same journey of like, I'm recognizing my stories. Okay, this is what's happening. And it's going to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to have to grow out of it. What has it been like having that like support inside of the community since you have stepped back in to be like, oh my gosh, we're kind of all doing this together?
I'm so glad you brought that up because I actually stopped the academy. I think I was pregnant with my first son thinking I had reached my potential. I thought that was it. I know what I'm doing. I don't need their help anymore. But what I came to realize through I had trainers in between, and then I came back, I think a year later, because I realized the support that I got here in the community was what I needed to really push myself forward. I've worked with a lot of really great coaches. There's no knocks on them, but having the community and having people that can relate to you and, mainly the relation, like everybody wants to be understood and you want to relate to people. And I think that was the biggest thing that I was missing. So coming back to a community and being able to relate and get out of our stuck, like wherever we're stuck, like getting out of that has been so wonderful. So literally I've paid for the academy twice and I would do it over and over again. Like that is not a problem to me because, right, like my money is worth less than what the experience I'm getting and the guidance. And not only that, but like in the most beautiful settings with the most beautiful people and the most beautiful hair and the most beautiful stories. And everyone's so passionate. And like you said, like the energy, like the you're just on a different playing field when you walk into that room of all these artists that are feeling the same feelings or, experiencing different kind of situations that are very similar. There's nothing like it.
There's nothing like it. And I think when we're in that place where you were, and I've been there and I've shared my parts of my story here on the podcast, but when you're in that place where you were before, you feel so alone, right? You're like, I was putting up this facade. Like I wanted everyone to think I had reached success and I wanted it to appear this way. But in reality, what happens is when you are in burnout, you feel alone. And when you are trying to do more and grow, but you don't know how, it literally feels like I'm the only one that's going through this. And you start to get back in those stories where you're like, no one understands. I can't do this because I live here. My clients would never. And then what that does is it isolate, like your own stories are isolating you. So when you're able to step into this tribe and have a community, those stories are so different. You start to see an example of like what it could be. And you're like, oh, she went through this too.
Right.
I'm not alone.
Right.
And now having you here and sharing your story, there are going to be students that listen to your story and feel the exact same way about you that you have felt about others in the community.
Right. 100%. And I hope that like resonates because when you've gone through it, you want to help other people, and not even necessarily help as in like save these people, but you want them to know that you're capable too. Like everyone is capable. I know it looks like there's a ceiling above you, but like, you know, like even my assistant working for me, I'm like, I want you to know that you can achieve this too. Like you don't have to live this story. You don't have to live this life that you grew up. Like you can get out of where you are. I know this looks impossible, but you're almost there. Just like don't give up on yourself and like invest in your future. It's a huge investment, but without it being scary and without that pressure, like it's like impossible. It's not impossible. It's possible, but
it
it's
feels impossible.
Yes. Yeah. It's a lot easier when you have a lot of support behind you.
Totally. And I think one thing that you said before was like you weren't married, you were single, you didn't have children, like that's what your life was, and you couldn't even envision this life. And so now you're married, you have children, you have this business, you have an assistant. Like I'm sure you thought at one point, there's no way I could ever have an assistant. Like what do I even teach them on? How do I pay them?
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. Like now that I'm past that point, I'm like, wow, I can't believe how scared I was just to step into like that leadership role, which again, I'm still working on it. But yeah, totally different. And also not only like, am I married, but it's like we're a happy couple. We have date nights because of like the example that's set by Garrett and Danielle. Like I feel like that's super, super important. It's about the relationship and the connections and really going deep into all the relationships you have around you and, you know, cutting out the dead weight and just really making sure you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people that make you feel good. Like you realize that your relationships with your clients don't have to be abusive. Like anything around you that's not making you feel good, you're starting to really realize what's good for you.
Yeah, because you're setting boundaries for yourself now.
Yes.
That where previously maybe you didn't have those boundaries before. And those boundaries are, yes, in our business, but those boundaries are also in our relationships, in our real everyday life. Like the boundaries you hold for yourself are the boundaries you hold for yourself. You're going to show up with the same ones in life as you are in business. And so I love that you're saying like, not only am I married, like I have a great relationship. Like we actively work on our relationship as an example of this hand-tied hair extension method. Right?
Yeah.
You would have never thought.
Never.
Like, I'm going to go learn hair extensions. Wait, my marriage is better?
Yes. Yeah.
So what does your husband think, and can he see the impact that this program has had for you two?
I would like to believe he can see the impact. Like we are two kids, like literally I feel like we're two teenagers raising our children, and we have the most amazing nanny. But yes, he can, and she sees it. Like we joke, we flirt, it's fun. Like I love that we have a fun relationship. I think he can see it, and I think it gets annoying because I'm very much in this like growth, always reaching for better, always being better. And my mom likes to take credit for this, but I take full credit for getting my husband his promotion at work.
Okay.
He became captain. He's a pilot, so he went from, as a co-pilot to a captain. And I was like, you have this. Like, just go for it. Like, it's scary. But again, what do we always say? Like, do it scared. Like, everything that you do, like, do it scared. If you're scared of the next level. You just have to move forward and
I love
on.
that. You were able to be like, I understand your limiting beliefs and I hear where you're at. However, you can do more.
Yes.
It was almost like you painted his own little vision quest for him. You're like, this is you at the next level. You could be you could be the pilot.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably not the greatest way to force somebody into something, but sometimes people take a little more nudging. And now he's like, his confidence level, like the way he walks around, like he stands up straighter. I feel like he will probably be so embarrassed if he hears this, but I just feel like I can see it in him. And I'm like much more attracted to him because I can see that confidence in him and I can see that he feels good about what he's done, And he sees that in me too. And
that's huge. That's huge what you just said.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are showing up at a higher level together because of the ability. Like you said, yeah, sometimes people need a little bit more of a push, but that's true. Like, we all respond differently. Like you said, you're like, I just jumped right in, right? Some of us just jump right in. Some of us need a little bit more like conversation around it. Like, everybody has a different level, but once you do it scared, wherever that level is, on the other side, when you look back, you're like, oh, that wasn't so scary. There might have been some rocky moments. I might have questioned if I knew what I was doing, but it's not so scary once you're on the other side.
Right.
So this version of you right now once scared you.
Oh, absolutely.
And so tell us a little bit about this next version that you got clarity on yesterday of what you want to growth mindset next.
I would say the next version of myself is definitely just more, again, like just more decisive. I feel like when you're decisive as a human, it just makes you have clear visions of like what you want. You have clear boundaries with clients. Like when you're wishy-washy, which I have a tendency to get a little bit like that, nobody understands like what you're expecting from them. That is including clients, that is family members, friends. So when you have these unrealistic expectations set up in your head, you can't possibly expect anybody to fulfill what you're expecting. And then you feel hurt and you feel mad. So I'm still working on that, the boundaries, the firm, clear vision.
Getting clear on those expectations.
Yes.
And I think too, sometimes when we're in that decision making of our expectations, sometimes we deflect and we say, I don't know what I want you to do. Like, I don't know what I want from you. When in reality, it's like, what do I want this outcome to be?
Right.
Getting clear with your own self.
Yes.
Rather than hoping that they get clear for you.
Yes. A big thing that I think I realized too, that this is like kind of embarrassing to even admit it, but I feel like when you look at everything in my life, I feel like I've been trying to like save people, and I do that with clients, and I'm realizing it's my ego.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still trying to break this like fake exterior. Like, I hate even saying that I have a fake exterior. I'm a very genuine person, but I feel like I have this
like a guard
almost to like, like I said in the beginning, to like fake it. Like I was faking my success. Like my ego has been the problem because I keep trying to save people. I keep trying to save clients. I keep trying to save people around me. Like I want to support people so much that it's not doing them a service. I'm doing them a disservice by them not learning on their own, or myself a disservice by getting hurt because I'm helping too much. So yeah, letting the ego go is another big thing in the future. So
I think too, the ego can be a tricky one because there's a part of confidence that we want to have.
Yes.
Where you're like, confidence is good. And then on the same token, you're like, too much ego is bad. And so sometimes that helps like perpetuate this indecisiveness because you're like, well, am I being confident or is this too much ego? And then you get into this like self-questioning. But one thing that I think is really important to go back to that, like you said, is, am I trying to save this person? Am I trying to save this client?
Yes.
Because if you ask yourself that question, you can decide if you're in ego because you're trying to save, or you're being a leader because you're being confident.
Right. And like realizing that I am not the stylist for every client. Like that, I think, is another ego situation, which has gotten me into a lot of trouble because I'm like, well, I can make this work. Like I can make this work. Like I want this person to want me almost. Like, you know, I want this client. But in reality, I don't want this client. They're not making me feel good. They don't respect it's not a Susie. We just need more Susies. So yes, I need to reflect back to that point. Like this is not serving me. It's not serving them. They're coming back. Like nobody's happy. They don't respect my pricing. They don't respect whatever it is. And I mean that with all the respect. Like I've had great, wonderful clients, but it's when it's not a fit, it's not a fit. Just like let it go, you know? Like don't force, I don't even want to say it, but like, you know, don't force a poop. It's like you can't force things.
Right? You're like, I can't make this happen.
No. Right.
I think that is huge. And if you're listening, I hope that you take that away. And I also hope that you can see yourself in that of, I know what it's like, and I can say that I am this way too. There was moments in my journey behind the chair of saying yes to clients that I knew I shouldn't, but because I was like, I want this client. Like, I need clients. And we're told, like, the client is the prize. If a client wants you, like, praise hands.
Right.
And to really reassess and be like, but is this client a fit, or am I trying to force it?
Right.
And for you listening, there's a client that you're trying to force. And when we say that, there's somebody that pops into your head. There's a client you're like, oh yeah, it's her or it's him. And I'm trying to make this work. How much are you giving them energetically? What are your boundaries with that person? And I would have you consider that it might be more than just a boundary with this person. That's just where it's showing up. This is a boundary probably in your business that might need to be just reassessed and reevaluated. And the moment you can at least have that conversation, I think that's when things begin to slowly shift in your story.
Yes. And those shifts also become easier to make, right?
Totally.
You know, the first one is always so hard, and you could never imagine doing this, like whatever it is, like your price increase, like setting actual hours, like whatever it is. Each layer gets a little bit easier, but it's still difficult, right? Every change.
I love that you said that. Like the first one is so difficult, but then you do it, and all of a sudden you're like, I lived. Oh my gosh. I thought I was going to die and I didn't die. Or I thought they were going to be so mad at me and they weren't. And then later, another opportunity for growth is at your door, and you've done it once before and you're like, well, I lived doing that. So if I do this one, I think I'll live again.
Right.
And then you do it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, this is working. And then it starts to happen quicker and more confidently. And then you become more decisive in it, because you've seen results with it.
Exactly. Yep.
You guys, I think that's it. We want you to make sure that you are taking steps to be decisive in your business, be decisive in your life. Stand firm in the decisions that you're making and setting those boundaries for yourself. Because once you can do that, that's where growth starts to happen. Once you're taking these steps, the next step becomes easier and it becomes more clear what that next step needs to be. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining the podcast with us today. You have been a delight to have here.
This has been really fun.
Do you have any final words or motivations or sign out for our listeners?
Gosh, on the spot. Yeah, just keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward. Little tiny steps will get you so far. It's all the consistency that's really going to push you forward. You don't want to stay stagnant, because that's where we die, right?
Stagnant's where we die. That's our sign off, you guys. If you want to know more about NBR Education, you can definitely look us up, nbr.education. We have all of our information. We have classes coming up. We have our big convention happening in April. So reach out to us. We'd love to invite you to be part of our tribe. Thank you so much. And I hope you guys have a great day.